Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the dirt-caked shoes of a medieval rat catcher. Picture this. You wake up to the sweet, pungent perfume of musty straw, yesterday's onion broth, and something distinctly rodent-adjacent. Your bed is a wooden frame stuffed with hay that's long since given up trying to be soft. And somewhere under it, you're pretty sure a rat is also just waking up, blinking at the light with the same confused existential fatigue you feel. This is your life now, and you probably won't survive it. Between the disease risks, the lack of plumbing, and the rats that genuinely seem smarter than some of the town officials, the odds aren't in your favor. But hey, at least it's honest work. Kinda. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in your little lean-to just outside the city wall, the kind of place that makes people whisper things like, well, they're doing their best. The roof leaks, the walls lean a little too casually, and the door's really just a board with dreams. Still, it's yours. You sit up slowly, hay sticking to your shirt, and the first sound you hear isn't birdsong or bells. Nope, it's a tiny skitter near your left boot. You lock eyes with a rat, a bold one. It doesn't even flinch, just stares at you like it's wondering if you're part of the furniture. You sigh. Not now, Gerald, you mumble. Gerald is not technically a pet. He's more like a roommate who never pays rent and sometimes chews holes in your socks. There's no mattress here, of course, no sheets, just straw and a slightly itchy wool blanket that smells vaguely of garlic, sweat, and ambition. You stretch your arms above your head, immediately regret it, and then stand. Your knees making that medieval rice cracker sound they always do when you move before sunrise. Your morning routine begins with checking your rat pouch. It's a sack you stitched yourself from burlap and sheer determination, and it contains the previous day's earnings. You carefully peek inside. One dead rat, two live ones, and something that might be a pine cone or might be a skull. You make a mental note to sort that out later. Your clothes are simple because rat catching doesn't exactly come with a uniform. You pull on your tunic, patchy but intact, your trousers, which have been mended in more places than you care to count, and your leather boots, both of which have seen better centuries. You don't have time to wonder if there's a hole in the sole. You'll find out the next time you step in a puddle. Outside, the city is still quiet. A few chimney smokes curl lazily upward. The butcher's boy is already hurrying down the road with a basket of mystery meat. Somewhere, a rooster is attempting to scream itself into relevance. You trudge toward your water barrel and splash your face. It's cold, mossy, and possibly home to its own small ecosystem, but it wakes you up better than any medieval coffee, which, for the record, is just burnt barley steeped in sadness. You don't eat right away. First, you've got to make the rounds. Your clients, mostly poorer folk, with the occasional, "my lord is too proud to admit he's infested," expect you early. They like to know the rats are being dealt with, even if that mostly means you poking around their homes, clucking thoughtfully, and then scooping up half-dead vermin with a stick and a prayer. But before you go, you grab your gear. Your rat stick, for example. It's literally a stick. You've carved it a bit to look impressive, but it's still just wood. It's good for prodding under floorboards or smacking things that shouldn't move but occasionally do. You also carry your bait, a sack of stale bread crusts and bits of dried meat that rats seem to find irresistible, which says a lot about medieval cuisine in general. You also bring your rat whistle. It doesn't work. You blew it once and a dog 3 streets over threw up. Still, it makes you feel official. Historians still argue whether medieval rat catchers had actual tools or if they just used whatever was lying around and called it professional gear. Based on your kit, you're leaning toward the second option. You sling your rat sack over your shoulder, it makes a sort of disconcerting squelch, and head off toward town. You nod at the blacksmith, who nods back without enthusiasm. You nod at the washerwoman, who gives you a look that says, "I still haven't forgiven you for leaving that rat in my basket." Fair enough. You shuffle into the narrow stone alley that serves as your shortcut to breakfast. Or, more accurately, the woman who sometimes throws scraps at you if she's in a good mood. Your stomach grumbles like a distant thunderstorm. It's not demanding much, just something vaguely edible that doesn't have fur, bones, or a face. As you turn the corner, you spot her, old Nan, ladling something from a bubbling cauldron outside her cramped cottage. She's part cook, part witch, part rat whisperer herself. Her stews are legendary for their texture, mud-adjacent, flavor, mysterious, and smell, loud. Still, she's better than most, and her food hasn't killed you yet. Probably. "Got anything this morning, Nan?" you call. She eyes you sideways, like she's calculating your usefulness against the cost of a ladleful. "Depends," she mutters. "You catch that whisker-faced devil in my rafters?" You nod solemnly. "Of course." You didn't, but you tried. Gerald is fast, cocky, and unreasonably talented at evading traps. You swear he winked at you once. Nan sighs and sloshes a heap of stew into a wooden bowl. It's brown, with flecks of darker brown. You sit cross-legged on a nearby crate and dig in, ignoring the fact that it steams even though it was probably cooked yesterday, maybe the day before. The taste is bland, then salty, then something that makes your left eye twitch. You chew carefully, hoping nothing crunches. This is what passes for breakfast as a medieval rat catcher: ambiguous stew, warm air laced with chimney smoke, and the faint smell of burning wool from somewhere down the street. As you eat, you check your rat pouch. Still squirming. Good. That means today's bait might still be useful. You tie the sack tighter and nudge it behind you in the shade. No need to invite curious onlookers or children with too many questions. Medieval kids are basically tiny spies with no boundaries and very sticky hands. A clatter nearby draws your attention. A man yells, something crashes, and you recognize that tone. Panic mixed with shame. Rat trouble. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve, toss your bowl back to Nan, she catches it without looking, and hoist your pouch over your shoulder. Time to work. The source of the commotion is a baker's shop, one of the nicer ones, meaning it has a sign, a roof that doesn't actively leak, and actual shelves. You duck inside and are immediately hit with a warm wave of cinnamon, flour, and fresh panic. "There," the baker hisses, pointing at a sack of flour that's rustling ominously. You raise your brow. "It's just one?" you ask. Because honestly, you were hoping for something slightly more worthy of your morning. "One is enough," he snaps. "This is wheat flour. You know how expensive that is." You don't. You're fairly certain your entire net worth could be traded for a single apple tart and a decent pair of socks. But you nod with the gravity of a seasoned professional. You approach the sack slowly, unslinging your rat stick. It's not exactly Excalibur, but it's yours. You crouch. The sack wiggles. You tap it. A blur of brown fur shoots out, bolts behind a shelf, and disappears with the agility of a creature who's been training for the medieval rat Olympics. You give chase, which is to say you jog awkwardly and bump into every available surface. The baker shouts about pastries. You crash into a table. Something falls and splatters. You don't look down. Eventually, you corner the little beast behind a stack of crates. It's tiny, nothing like Gerald, but it has the same smug little twitch of the nose. You trap it with a careful swipe of your stick and drop it into your sack. One more for the day. You tie the top tighter, just in case. Done, you say, turning back to the baker, who's now inspecting the damage you didn't cause but are being blamed for. He scowls. I suppose I owe you. Bread, you reply, before he offers something worse. He grumbles, hands you a loaf that might double as a weapon, and waves you out. You head back to the street and bite into the loaf cautiously. It's hard enough to chip a tooth, but fills your belly just enough to keep going. The rat pouch shifts again. You feel it press against your back like a living reminder of your status. You've often wondered what people must think when they see you trudging around with a sack that sometimes squeaks. Rat catchers aren't the bottom of the ladder, but they're definitely not near the top. You don't deal in life or death the way surgeons do, but you dabble in pestilence, which is sort of adjacent. You reach the edge of the market square, which today is unusually loud. A combination of squawking geese, bell-clanging hawkers, and a minstrel trying to rhyme the words turnip and justice. You're not impressed, but the rat in your sack seems agitated by the noise, so you take the long route around the crowd. Your destination is tucked behind a row of crooked stalls and half-rotten canvas awnings, your equipment shed. That's a generous title. It's more of a glorified cupboard nailed to a wall behind an abandoned stable, but it holds your prized possessions, your tools of the trade, all 6 of them. You open the creaky wooden door and reveal a modest collection that would make even the most desperate scavenger sigh in disappointment. There's your backup rat stick, splintered but sentimental, a cracked jar of old grease, for reasons you've forgotten, and a bundle of ropes and snares you made from hair, string, and whatever was lying around the last time you were bored and underpaid. There's also a small wooden box you open with theatrical flair, even though no one's watching. Inside, your hand-carved rat decoy. Yes, it's just a lump of wood vaguely shaped like a rat. Yes, you once painted it with soot and beet juice, and yes, it's never worked. But it feels professional. That counts. You take inventory. 1 snare still looks usable. 1 net, more holes than net at this point. You gingerly lift it, half expecting it to disintegrate in your hands, but it holds. You've used it to catch 4 rats, 1 squirrel, and once your own foot. Your final item is the real treasure, your gloves. They're rough, cracked leather and too stiff to flex properly, but they've saved your fingers more than once. Medieval rats aren't just annoying, they're aggressive. Some of them seem to operate with union-level coordination. Gerald, for instance, has evaded every tool you've thrown at him, including this very net. Historians still argue whether rat catchers use dogs, ferrets, or even cats to assist, but in your case, it's just you, your tools, and your mild but constant frustration. You load up what you can carry. The decoy goes in your pouch, for good luck more than function. The gloves go on your hands. The net you fold neatly and sling over your shoulder, and the snare you tuck into your belt like you're some kind of heroic medieval trapper. If anyone saw you now, they'd still avoid eye contact, but maybe with slightly more respect. As you turn to leave, you spot a rat on the edge of the alley. Not Gerald, but close. This one has a distinctive limp and 1 ear. You've named him Arlo, mainly because you've been seeing him for over a year and you're too emotionally invested to trap him now. He stares at you from behind a cabbage crate, blinks once, and vanishes into a crack in the stone. You sigh. Some rats are just colleagues at this point. The next job comes to you, as it often does, in the form of a kid running at you full speed and almost knocking you into a puddle. "Mr. Ratman!" the child yells. You resist the urge to correct him. You've tried explaining your name. No one remembers it. You're the Ratman now. The boy pants. "Mom says come quick, the pantry's haunted." You blink. "Haunted?" He nods seriously. "Rats with glowing eyes." You don't get paid extra for ghost rats, but curiosity gets the better of you. The boy leads you through twisting alleys into a part of town you rarely visit, where the buildings lean like gossiping drunks and every door creaks in protest. You arrive at Marrow Stone House with a crooked chimney and moss-covered steps. Inside, the smell hits first: rot, mold, and something vaguely pickled. The boy's mother appears, arms crossed, expression somewhere between panic and annoyance. "In the pantry," she says. "Something scratched me last night. Took the good cheese." You nod solemnly. You've dealt with worse. You head toward the pantry, pulling on your gloves. The boy follows until his mother yanks him back by the collar. You open the pantry door cautiously. It creaks like it's narrating its own misery. Inside, shelves of jars, a suspiciously chewed bread loaf, and definite movement near a sack of lentils. You kneel, listening. Then you see it. 2 tiny eyes, reflective, smug, and a squeak that sounds more like a snicker. It's Gerald. Of course it is. You lunge. He vanishes. You smack your elbow on a jar. It shatters. Something pickled splashes across the floor. You fling your net. It snags a sack of onions. Gerald escapes. Again. You sit back, panting slightly, surrounded by chaos, onions, and disappointment. You're chewing the last gritty bite of onion bread when you hear the familiar clatter of boots on cobblestone, fast, determined, slightly too polished. A voice calls your name. Well, not your actual name. Ratcatcher! Which, let's be honest, is as close to a medieval nickname as you're ever going to get. You turn and see a page boy, a young lad in a tunic that's trying very hard to be impressive, approaching like he's on a royal mission. Which he sort of is. "The Lord requests your presence," the boy announces. Chest puffed, voice cracking on Lord like he's trying to impress the chickens. You raise an eyebrow. "Which Lord?" "The Lord," he repeats, as if that clears everything up. Of course, Lord Belfry. The one with the lace cuffs, fancy dogs, and a deep personal vendetta against anything that isn't velvet. He's also notoriously squeamish, and once fainted when his soup had a hair in it. And now, apparently, he has rats. You follow the boy through the merchant district, past the stalls of wool and fish and medieval arguments about the price of cabbage, until you reach Belfry Manor. It's grand, towering, and somehow manages to look both expensive and vaguely disappointed in you. The steward meets you at the gate with a look like he's just bitten into a lemon and discovered it was sentient. "This way," he says, leading you through the halls, where every curtain could smother a horse and every rug looks like it cost more than your entire childhood. You're ushered into the drawing room, where Lord Belfry is standing on a chair with a candlestick in one hand and a pillow in the other. He's pale, shaking, and dressed in enough silk to clothe a small village. "They're in the walls," he hisses. You blink. "The rats?" "Yes, the rats!" He gestures wildly toward the fireplace. "I heard scratching, terrible scratching, like claws on bone." You nod slowly, stepping toward the hearth. Could be rats, could also be, a draft. "It was personal," he insists. You resist the urge to ask if the scratching spelled out his name. You kneel and inspect the hearth. No obvious signs at first, no droppings, no smell, but then there it is. One tiny hole. Just enough space for a rat to squeeze through, maybe set up a tiny chaise lounge and have tea. You pull on your gloves and reach into your pouch for some bait. Dried fish, slightly fermented. The kind of thing that attracts rats and makes lesser nobles gag. You hear it before you see it, a soft shuffle behind the wall. Then a squeak. Then silence. "They're mocking me," Belfry whispers. You look up. "Do you say that about all your pests?" He doesn't answer. You set a snare at the base of the fireplace and a crumb trail that leads to your net, which you arrange with surprising elegance, probably the most sophisticated decor in the room now.
Belfry retreats to the far corner with a glass of wine he seems to be using as a shield. You pretend not to notice him shivering. While you wait, you do what any professional would do. You poke around. The walls are thick, the carpet's deep, and the room smells faintly of rosemary and ego. You tap along the paneling, listening for hollow sounds. In one corner, you hear a muffled tap, tap, tap. There it is again, the rat run, a tiny tunnel system that crisscrosses noble houses like a secret rat subway. Historians still argue whether rats in large homes were simply a result of poor construction or if they were drawn to the absurd amount of discarded meat pies. You lean toward the latter. Medieval kitchens were generous, chaotic, and deeply unsupervised. Suddenly, the net jerks. You dive. You miss. You crash face first into a chaise longue. The rat, small, gray, and very fast, darts across the room, directly over Lord Belfry's foot. He screams like a soprano with a vendetta. You grab your rat stick and give chase. The rat zips under the tapestry, behind a stool, and finally into a crack under a bookcase. Too small to reach, too clever to forget. You sigh, adjust your bruised dignity, and face your client. "Well," Belfry demands. "Still assessing," you reply diplomatically, rubbing your nose. He doesn't look convinced, but he also looks nauseated, so you declare the room partially neutralized and request access to the cellar. The steward groans, but complies. The cellar is a whole different ecosystem. Cold, damp, filled with barrels that smell of sour wine and worse. You descend carefully, lantern in hand, and immediately feel that tingling on the back of your neck. Classic rat amp.
The cellar air clings to your clothes as you walk back into the daylight, heavy and sour like wet wool left too long in a corner. You pause outside Lord Belfry's manor, give your rat pouch a gentle shake. It squeaks, confirming the newest member of your collection, and turn your boots toward your next job. And by job, you mean the real reason nobles call you, their cellars. If there's one universal truth in medieval life, it's that cellars are where dreams and grains go to die. No matter how grand the house, the cellar always smells like damp wood, despair, and last year's apples. It's where rats thrive, cool, dark, and rarely visited unless someone spills wine and wants to cry in private. Your next stop is Lady Trelwyn's estate, a smaller manor nestled against the southern wall of the city. Her steward left a note with old Nan this morning. Urgent infestation, bread barrels compromised, Lady Trelwyn inconsolable. You're pretty sure that last part was exaggerated. Nobles have a strange relationship with their bread. You knock, and a pale-faced maid answers. "She's waiting," she whispers, eyes darting like someone who's seen things, rat things. You're led down a corridor lined with old paintings, most of which are just different generations of people who looked like they frowned for a living. Finally, a door opens into the kitchen. A cook gestures frantically at a trapdoor in the floor, then immediately leaves, muttering something about curses. You open the trapdoor. The smell hits you like a wheelbarrow full of mildew. You lower yourself down the stone steps into the gloom, boots echoing on the moist stone. It's not the worst cellar you've seen, but it's close. The walls are slick, like they've been sweating for centuries. There's mold on the ceiling. The barrels are all gnawed at the corners. One has been fully breached. Flour spills out like a little avalanche of disappointment. You kneel beside it, lift a handful of flour, and let it sift through your fingers. You're no detective, but the paw prints here aren't subtle. Large ones, multiple. And judging by the amount of mess, these rats aren't just visiting, they're living here. You scan the corners with your lantern. Shadows flinch and shift. You move slowly, setting down your sack, pulling out your net, and crouching near an upturned crate. You smell rat, musty, oily, ancient. It's a scent you've come to recognize like a twisted sort of cologne. Suddenly, a rustle from behind a barrel, then a squeak, short, sharp, defiant. You turn. There it is. A beast of a rat standing atop a flour sack like a furry overlord. Its fur is patchy, its left ear is missing, and you swear it's glaring at you. You blink. It doesn't move. Neither do you. This is a standoff. You take a step forward. So does it. You freeze. Gerald? No response, of course. Just the rustle of another rat behind it. Back up. You take another step and raise your net. And that's when the sack collapses. Flour explodes into the air like a white cloud of humiliation. You cough, blinded, flailing your net in every direction. You hear rats scurrying, lots of them, above you, beside you, under you. You trip on something soft, maybe a boot, maybe a ghost, and go sprawling into the flour like a fallen pastry chef. By the time the air clears and your lungs stop wheezing, the rats are gone. Again. The sack lies deflated. Your pride also. You pick yourself up, shake out your clothes, and find 2 rats in your net, either trapped accidentally or too slow to escape. You pocket them with grim satisfaction. You inspect the rest of the cellar. It's riddled with tunnels, gnawed paths leading from wall cracks to corners of grain. You mark a few with chalk, setting small traps in places the light doesn't reach. You mutter as you work, nothing profound, just a stream of commentary only half intended for the rats. You know, Gerald, one of these days we're going to have a real conversation about rent. Historians still argue whether some rat infestations were ever truly solved in medieval times, or if people just learned to coexist with the squeaky underworld. Judging by this manor's cellar, the rats are winning the long game. You climb back up the steps and dust off your shoulders. The maid is waiting with a pouch of coins and a cloth of lavender to wipe your face. You decline the cloth. It's too nice for you. You're halfway down the road toward the tannery, because nothing says lunchtime like the smell of boiled leather and old urine when something rustles behind a pile of firewood stacked outside the butcher's. Your ears perk up like a cat's. Well, a very tired, slightly grumpy cat with questionable reflexes. You crouch. Slowly. Carefully. Stick in hand. You nudge the pile. And there he is, Gerald. Or at least it's a rat with the same bold, glossy stare and the distinct air of having done your taxes without your permission. He stares at you. You stare back. The street, for a moment, goes quiet. Then he bolts. You launch into pursuit without thinking, net flailing, pouch bouncing against your back like a squirming drum, boots slapping on cobblestones. Gerald dashes under carts, over crates, and into one of the back alleys where the ground stays permanently wet and the air smells like someone tried to pickle sadness. You corner him behind a collapsed rain barrel. You have him. He's right there. You raise your net and pause. He's looking at you. Not scared, not twitchy, just disappointed. You swing. He ducks. The net snags on the broken handle of the barrel and flings back into your face. You go down hard, right into the puddle. You blink up at the sky, face wet, pride crushed. Gerald squeaks once, mockingly, and vanishes into the shadows. You lie there for a moment. The puddle is cold, your net smells worse than ever, and your left eye might now be part onion from earlier. A woman leaning out her window watches you with the polite horror one reserves for a man who's clearly lost a duel with a rodent. "Do you need a priest?" she asks. "No," you say, sitting up with a squelch. "Just maybe a miracle." You drag yourself upright and trudge back to the tannery. It's your usual drop-off point for dead rats. The owner, Hob, is a man of few words and even fewer teeth. He buys rat hides,
For what purpose, you try not to think about. Gloves, probably. Or hats. Hobbs not picky. He sees you, raises a hand, and grunts. You toss him the 2 stiff corpses from your pouch. He pokes them, nods approvingly, and flips you a pair of copper coins and a heel of bread that might be older than you. You thank him anyway and chew as you walk. It's stale but edible, maybe. You're not entirely sure if the crunch is from grain or something previously alive. The sun is dipping lower now. Shadows stretch long between the buildings. You know this time of day. It's when the rats start getting bold, no longer hiding in cracks, but darting openly through doorways, across tables, sometimes even over sleeping cats. This is the prime ratting window. You head toward the river quarter. It's older there, more wooden structures, more dampness, and more stories. You duck into one of your regular haunts, Old Kethel's place. She's a widow who pays you in gossip and soup. The house smells like thyme and something vaguely medicinal. "Oh, it's you," she says when you knock. "Back again? Thought maybe the rats finally got you." "Nearly," you reply. "I think Gerald's unionizing." She chuckles and waves you in. They're back in the attic. You groan. Her attic is infamous. Low ceiling, bad ladder, full of dust and emotional trauma. But you go, because it's your job, and because she always gives you soup afterward. You climb up, head ducked, and poke your stick into the dark. Something moves, then 2 things, then a lot of things. You squint. It's a nest, a big one. Twigs, straw, chewed parchment, a spoon, someone's sock. These rats are decorating. You admire their work, just for a second, before launching into your routine. Net here, bait there, quiet muttering and slow breathing. You catch 2, maybe 3. One escapes by launching itself off the beam and onto your shoulder, then uses your back as a slide. You yelp. You hear Old Kethel below. "That better not be you breaking my roof again." You manage to scoop another into your pouch and retreat before any of them start singing. You descend, sweaty and slightly bruised, and collapse into a wooden chair. She hands you a bowl. It's hot. It smells decent. You don't ask what's in it. You just eat. Over soup, she tells you the latest neighborhood news. Someone's cow gave birth to twins, the baker's daughter is secretly seeing the miller's apprentice, and a priest saw a rat holding a rosary. Was it Gerald, you ask? Might have been, she said.
You make your way toward the tavern, where the scent of burnt barley and bad decisions hangs thick in the air. This one's called the Staggering Goat, and it lives up to the name. Half the patrons stagger in, the rest stagger out. You go here not because you enjoy the drinks, which you absolutely don't, or the company, also questionable, but because it's where people talk. And where people talk, rats walk. You push open the warped wooden door. The hinges squeal like they're trying to alert the entire village to your arrival. A few heads turn, most glance away again. You're not the kind of celebrity people want to acknowledge in public. You smell faintly of dust, fried onions, and betrayal, after all. The innkeeper, Bran, raises a mug in greeting. You look like you've been kissed by something diseased. Only emotionally, you reply, sliding onto a stool that's just sticky enough to raise questions. "Stew?" he asks, which is more of a threat than an offer. You nod anyway. The bowl arrives. It contains chunks, possibly meat, possibly root vegetables, definitely heat. You eat it because your stomach insists on continuing to function even when your taste buds protest. As you eat, you listen. The tavern is full of the usual medieval hum. Drunken boasting, a lute player strumming a tune with exactly 3 notes, and someone snoring in the corner with his face in a plate of something once edible. Across the room, a man slams his mug down. "I tell you, it bit clean through my boot." Another man leans in.
Didn't even blink, that one. Bold little bugger. You perk up. You know that tone. Rat trouble. You approach casually for someone with a bulging rat pouch and a stick strapped to their back. Evening, you say. They eye you suspiciously. You the rat man? The first one asks, wiping his beard with a sleeve that might once have been white. That's me. He jerks a thumb toward the back room. Ovens, bread store, chewed to ribbons. You follow him through a curtain that smells like old soup and secrets. The back room is dim, lined with shelves of hard bread, sacks of flour, and one very nervous-looking cat perched high on a beam. You make a note. If the cat's scared, you should be concerned. You kneel, poke your stick under a crate, and hear it. The rustle. Then the scritch-scratch of tiny claws. Then silence. You set a trap, baited with cheese and a slice of Bran's bread. You whisper a few curses for good measure, and wait. It takes only minutes. A rat, larger than average, possibly armored, you can't confirm, scuttles into view. It sniffs the air, eyes the trap, and then, impossibly, flips it with its nose and trots off, tail swaying like a challenge. You blank. Was that? The man behind you starts. Yep, you sigh. That was Gerald. You named it. You don't get it, you mutter, adjusting your gloves. He's not just a rat. He's the rat. Historians still argue whether rat infestations in taverns were ever reported officially, or whether innkeepers just fed the rats stale bread to keep them docile. Judging by Bran's supply, you're guessing the latter. You catch 2 smaller ones, scoop them quickly, and reset the trap. The men clap you on the back and shove a free tankard into your hands. You don't drink it, you sniff it, and decide to use it to clean your net later. Back at your table, Bran joins you. You look tired, he says, sitting down with the grace of someone whose knees retired 20 years ago. Gerald's getting smarter, you mumble, eyeing the rat-sized hole under the bench nearby. He heard he once stole a baby's rattle, Bran says. Gave it back, too, out of guilt. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Or maybe it was hunger. Or he's forming some sort of rodent religion. You chuckle. Then you sigh. You're exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that settles in your bones and tries to convince your brain to retire early. But there's still work to do. Always. You stand, stretch, and thank Bran. He tosses you half a loaf and a packet of dried peas, in case the rats get peckish. You nod and step back into the evening chill. The air outside is crisper now, carrying the smell of chimney smoke, damp cobblestones, and the faintest whiff of roasted chestnuts from the market square.
The sun has barely dipped below the horizon, but already the streets begin to empty. People hurry indoors, bolting doors and shuttering windows. Night in a medieval town is not for the faint of heart. It brings out the cold, the creatures, and the whispers. You, of course, are still walking, because tonight you've been summoned to something far worse than any rat, a dinner invitation. You grip the folded note in your hand, ink-smudged, rushed handwriting. Come by for supper. Need a word about something urgent. Tea. The tea can only mean one person. Thomas of the Bleeding Bellows. He's not a doctor, not a priest, just the loudest man in the Tanner's Guild and someone who once claimed a rat tried to seduce his wife. You don't want to go, but he's a repeat client and occasionally pays in boots. So you make your way there, feet dragging like they know better. Thomas's home is built into the side of a slope near the town's edge. It leans like it's ashamed of itself, and it smells like a love letter to vinegar and rotting leather. You knock. The door flies open, revealing Thomas's enormous face and a grin full of teeth that don't all belong together.
There he is, my favorite exorcist of the whiskered plague. You say that to all your rat catchers, you mutter. You're the only one who hasn't fled in tears, he replies cheerfully. Inside, the place is dimly lit by candles that are clearly struggling to stay alive. You're shown to a table where something brown stews in a cracked ceramic bowl. Sit, eat, and listen, Thomas says, plopping a piece of bread onto your bowl like a garnish made of despair. You take a bite. It tastes like boiled decisions. He leans forward, voice low. They're back. You blink. The rats? No, he whispers. The rat. You raise an eyebrow. Big, gray, missing ear, smells of arrogance. You blink again. You've met Gerald? He walked across my bed last night, looked me in the eye, took a piece of cheese and left. You sigh. That tracks. And I swear he saluted. You chew in silence. I need him gone, Thomas says. Not caught, not killed. Gone. Like erased from the earth, forgotten by the gods. Historians still argue whether medieval folk really believed certain rats were possessed or cursed, or if they just liked blaming them for all their problems. You're inclined to believe both. I'll try, you say. It's all you can say. After dinner, which ends with a strange pudding that may have blinked at you, you go upstairs. Thomas shows you the scene of the crime. A modest bedroom with one too-short bed, one broken lantern, and an impressive collection of empty cheese rinds on the windowsill. You kneel, inspect the floorboards, and find what you expected. Droppings, chewed lint, and the scent of smugness. Gerald has been here, and he's left no doubt about it. You set 2 snares under the bed, one baited with cheese, the other baited with Thomas's secret spice mix, which smells like burnt cabbage and optimism. Do you think it'll work? Thomas asks, clutching a blanket. Honestly, Gerald's out of your league. He nods solemnly, like you've just confirmed a failed marriage. You leave him to sleep, if he can, and make your way downstairs, where the cat sits on a windowsill, clearly watching something outside. You follow its gaze. A shape, small, moving, along the rooftop opposite. Gerald, again. You step outside, ignoring Thomas's shouting behind you. Don't let him bite you, that's how he gets in. And creep along the alley behind the house. The rooftops here form a sort of path, interlinked, uneven, but passable for something small, fast, and unburdened by existential dread. You see the flash of movement again. You whistle softly. A mistake. There's a pause, and then a single, defiant squeak. He's mocking you now. You scan the alley for signs, droppings, footprints, a fallen scrap of cloth. Nothing concrete. But then you spot it. A half-eaten berry tart on a windowsill, still warm. A tiny bite taken from the edge. Gerald was here. You resist the urge to chuck your nets.
Morning sneaks into your hut like a rat through a crack. Quiet, cold, and unwelcome. Light filters through the slats in your roof, cutting your face in half with a beam of sunshine that's far too judgmental for this hour. You groan and sit up, brushing straw from your hair, and immediately regret moving. Your shoulder aches from yesterday's rooftop stumble. Or was it the tavern floor scuffle? Honestly, at this point, you have a loyalty card for injuries. Your rat pouch is still squirming, which means breakfast might be on hold until you make a few drop-offs. You strap on your boots, still damp, and glance at your stick, which leans against the wall like it too is tired of this life. You sigh in unison. Outside, the air is fresh in that way that makes you instantly suspicious. Something about the wind feels too calm. Birds are singing, people are smiling,
You hate it. And then you remember, it's Guild Day. Not a celebration, not really a meeting, more of a grudging congregation of fellow rat catchers who get together once a month to exchange lies, injuries, and unwashed gloves. The Rat Catchers Guild isn't official. No crest, no funding, no town backing. But there's a chalk mark behind the tanner's stable that means we meet at sundown. So you'll be there, because you always are. Because despite the smell and the competition, they're the only people who understand what it's like to chase something smarter than most nobles. You start your day with your usual route. Check in with the baker, who's still convinced rats are chewing in Morse code. Peek under the butcher's crates, one rat, lazy, caught it with your hand, and then detour to the candle makers, where rats love the tallow like bees love flowers. The candle maker's assistant greets you with a nod. "They're back," he says, holding up a chewed candle stub. You kneel, inspect the waxy bite marks, and nod. Small teeth, juveniles, maybe a splinter group. He blinks. Of rats? You nod again, serious. Could be a new family unit forming. Historians still argue whether rat infestations ever followed structured colony dynamics in medieval cities, or whether they simply swarmed wherever humans were dumb enough to leave breadcrumbs. Either way, these ones are organized, probably holding elections in the walls. You set a trap beneath the candle racks, using a smear of bacon grease and a piece of stale honey cake as bait. Sweet and salty, irresistible to rats and questionable tavern-goers alike. You catch 2 in under 15 minutes. One tries to play dead. Nice try. After a few more stops, you finally loop around toward the guild meeting, held, as always, in the ruined mill at the edge of town. It's mostly intact. Mostly. The roof's a suggestion, and half the floorboards creak like they're narrating their own demise. You slip in through the side, where a plank has been kicked loose for easier sneaking. Inside, the smell hits first. A heady mix of sweat, mildew, and rats. Some live, some extremely not. The others are already there. There's Hobbs, the guy with the twitchy eye who swears he invented the net. He didn't. There's Letty, the only rat catcher who wears a cloak for dramatic flair. She's currently sharpening her stick like she's expecting a duel. And there's Tom, quiet, wiry, always reading scrolls too old to be useful. You nod at them. They nod back. You all sit in a loose circle on overturned crates. There's no order, no hierarchy, just a few dirty people comparing notes on rodents. "Anyone seen the one-eared brute?" Hobbs asks. "Gerald," Letty snorts. "He stole my entire trap last week, unhooked it, and left a pebble in its place. A pebble." "I saw him eat a plum out of someone's hand," Thumb mutters. "Didn't run, just stared." You stay quiet. You've seen worse. Gerald once held eye contact while defecating on a noble's silk sheets. That kind of psychological warfare stays with a person. You discuss tactics. New bait ideas? Smoked eel. Too fancy. New trap designs. Letty's involve string and 3 bells. Untested. And rumors of a plague rat seen near the docks. That last bit gets a few chuckles. Everyone knows plague rats are just regular rats with a branding problem. Then someone mentions a whisper from a monk, a claim that rats can understand human speech. You all fall silent. "Gerald understands intentions," you mutter. They nod solemnly. The meeting ends as it always does, with a moment of silence for the trap's loss to clever teeth, and a collective groan as everyone stands and stretches like creaky church pews. Back outside, the sun's almost gone. You part ways without.
You don't sleep well. Maybe it's the wind moaning through the eaves. Maybe it's the rat pouch twitching beside you. Or maybe it's the very real, very unsettling fact that Gerald gave you money yesterday. You lie awake, staring at the slatted ceiling, trying to figure it out. Was it a message? A warning? Payment for services rendered? Or, and this haunts you the most, was it a tip? A gratuity from one professional to another? You get up before sunrise, lighting a stub of candle and pulling on your boots like you're arming yourself for war. There's work to do, yes, but also questions to answer. Specifically, what in heaven's name is going on in this rat-infested city? And, wouldn't you know it, the answers start at the chapel. The bells ring out over the rooftops, calling the faithful and the fearful alike. You go not to pray, but to listen. Father Willem is old, half-blind, and occasionally confused, but he hears things. People confess to him. Drunk, tired, frightened, they whisper their strangest tales. And the good father, bless him, never throws anything away, not even rumors. You slip into the back pew just as he finishes a sermon about gluttony and the dangers of cheese that has stared too long into the abyss. You listen politely. When the last amen echoes, you wait until the last candle gutters low before approaching the altar. He squints at you. Ah, Rat Man. That's me. Here for the usual, or are we repenting your unholy alliance with the Vermin King? Bit of both, maybe, you reply. You sit together near the choir stalls, where the scent of incense mingles with damp stone and melted wax. I heard a rumor, you begin, that someone saw a rat with a rosary. Father Willem smiles, revealing 2 teeth and half a secret. Brother Malcolm claims he saw it praying. You pause. Praying? Knees bent, tiny paws together, near the statue of Saint Bertram. Could have been grooming. Could have been salvation, he counters. Historians still argue whether rats played symbolic roles in medieval religious superstition, or if people were just extremely bored and terrified. Some believed rats were manifestations of sin. Others said they were spies for demons. One monk swore they were angels in disguise, here to test our charity. You're skeptical. I've been seeing one, you say, over and over. Same rat, missing an ear, smarter than most people I know. Father Willem nods. Gerald. You blink. You know his name? Oh, I don't, but I've heard it. He reaches beneath his robes and pulls out a parchment scrap. On it, a crude sketch of a rat. One ear, small crown above his head. They're calling him the Rat Saint now, Willem says, tone utterly serious. That's excessive, you mutter. He's become a symbol, to some a legend, to others a warning. A warning of what? He shrugs, that we are not the only clever species in town. You sit back, overwhelmed for a moment. Want some blessed cheese? He asks. What? He pulls a tiny wedge from a cloth pouch, consecrated by a bishop last spring, in case of demonic infestation. You take it, mostly out of politeness. It smells like guilt and goat milk. As you leave, he calls after you. If you catch him, don't kill him. Mark my words, Gerald's part of something bigger. You nod slowly. So's the plague. He just smiles. Back in the street, the city is waking up. Chickens squawk, people argue about turnips. A wheelbarrow loses a wheel in the mud with a great splorch. You feel unsettled, like something has shifted. Gerald isn't just a rat anymore. He's folklore. You stop by Old Nan's on your way home. She's a walking library of nonsense, perfect for this. You find her hunched over a bowl of acorn soup. I hear you're chasing the Rat Saint, she says without looking up. You groan. Don't you start. Snot new, she mutters. Happens every few decades. Always one rat smarter than the rest. Clever enough to spook folk. Leave coins, write messages. You wake up feeling watched. Not the usual, maybe there's a rat in my boot kind of watched, but the deep, primal kind that presses between your shoulder blades and makes you regret sleeping with your back to the wall. You sit up slowly. Your hut is silent. Too silent. No creaking, no scratching, no pouch twitching. That's the first thing you notice. Your rat pouch is still. You lean over and open it carefully. Empty. Gone. Not a hole in sight. The strings still tied, but the rats, 3 of them caught just yesterday, have vanished without a trace. No gnaw marks, no droppings, just gone. You sit back and exhale through your nose. Okay, Gerald, well played. You eat a piece of hard cheese for breakfast, not because you want to, but because your stomach insists on participating in this increasingly bizarre story. Then you pack your things and step into the gray morning. The air is damp, the sky the color of wet ash, and the streets oddly quiet, like the town knows something you don't. You walk to the baker's first, a routine stop, comforting in its simplicity. The baker greets you with a nod, but no smile. They got into the rye, he says simply. You follow him into the back room. There's flour everywhere, claw marks along the shelves. A single rat turd sitting directly on top of a half-finished loaf, like an angry exclamation point. You trap 2 more, new ones, not Gerald, not clever enough. You sigh, hand the baker a few tips on flour storage, and keep moving. But something feels off. Everywhere you go today, people act strangely. Not afraid exactly, more reverent, respectful, like they're in mourning or awe. The tanner's assistant bows slightly when she hands you a coin. The fishmonger whispers, "Be careful near the docks. They say he walks there now." You don't ask who. You already know. Gerald. You make your way toward the edge of the docks, where the city thins out and the smell of brine and tar takes over from bread and sweat. You don't usually come here. Too damp, too many hiding places, too many stories. But today, you follow the trail of whispers. You pass crates stacked 3 high, nets hanging from rusted hooks, and fish guts congealing in puddles. And then you see it. A gathering. Small, quiet, strange. 4 people kneeling at the base of a stone wall near a storm drain. They're not praying, not exactly, but their heads are bowed. In front of them, a piece of cheese, a dried fish, and a tiny clay token in the shape of a rat. You approach slowly. They glance up, but don't stop. One of them, an older woman you vaguely recognize from the dye works, whispers, "He solved the grain theft." You blink. Who? The gray one, the earless one. He pointed, showed us the hiding place. Another nods. He saved us from the miller's boy, told the rats to stay away from our sacks. You stare. Gerald gave instructions? They nod. You walk away without another word. Your head is buzzing now, not with panic, with confusion. Because deep down, you can't say it's not possible. Gerald has always been different, faster, smarter, bolder. But this is something else. You walk along the edge of the river, staring into the dark water, trying to sort your thoughts. Was this always coming? Did you miss the signs, the clever escapes, the coin, the chalk markings? Historians still argue whether the medieval belief in animal saints had roots in paganism or desperation, but either way, the myths always follow the same pattern. A creature outsmarts humans, performs miracles, earns reverence,
and disappears. Is that what Gerald is now? A miracle? You stop beside the stone bridge, where the shadows gather thickest. And that's when you hear it, a squeak, followed by a tiny splash. You turn. There he is, standing on a support beam, one ear.
Morning breaks slower than usual. The light takes its time slanting in, almost as if the sun itself is hesitating, reluctant to shine down on a world where rats are organizing like tiny revolutionaries. You wake stiff and sore, but not from rat bites or ladder bruises this time. It's the weight of questions, of coins dropped like riddles, of symbols clawed into doorframes, of people kneeling at storm drains like pilgrims at shrines. You step outside with a half-eaten crust in your hand and no real plan. That alone is unsettling. Usually, the day begins with a known complaint. Rats in the bakery, a nest in the hayloft, maybe a noble screaming into a scented handkerchief. But not today. Today, you are summoned. A messenger boy, skinny, breathless, and way too clean, finds you on the street and thrusts a folded scrap of parchment into your palm. You recognize the wax seal, Lady Brandwin, widow, eccentric, fond of ornamental pigeons. Not one to ask for a rat catcher unless things have truly gone sideways. You follow the boy through winding alleys to her townhouse, where the garden is suspiciously overgrown and the vines seem to be plotting something. You're greeted not by the lady herself, but by her steward, a gaunt man who smells faintly of lavender and unspoken trauma. "She's expecting you," he says, already regretting it. You're led through rooms that grow increasingly cluttered with oddities, dried herbs, broken clocks, taxidermied ferrets. You pass a hallway lined with portraits, each featuring a different pigeon in increasingly elaborate hats. Finally, you reach a sitting room. Lady Brandwin is seated on a chaise, wearing what can only be described as a fur-trimmed robe, pearls, and a look of mild hysteria. "They're back," she says without preamble. "Who?" She lowers her voice. "The speaking rats." You blink. "Beg pardon?" She leans forward. I was asleep, then awake, and there it was, on my nightstand, sitting, holding a thimble. It looked at me, and I swear to St. Elford, it sighed. You wait. And then it squeaked. Not a normal squeak, not random, a message, like you should reconsider the grain supplier. You say nothing, because what can you say? She gestures wildly to a corner of the room. It left this. You walk over and inspect it. It's a wooden spool, wrapped in thread, balanced atop a tiny square of lace. A gift? A warning? A prank? You pick it up carefully. The steward clears his throat behind you. Lady Brandwin has certain sensitivities. You nod. Clearly. Still, you check the room. It's clean. Too clean. You find no droppings, no fur, no signs of nesting. And yet, there's a faint smell. Not the sour musk of ordinary rats, but something sharper, more intentional. "Did you speak back to it?" you ask. She gasps. "Of course not. One mustn't encourage them." You pocket the spool and bow slightly. "I'll investigate." On the way out, the steward mutters, "She wasn't always like this. Used to breed geese." You nod slowly, as if that explains everything. Outside, you hold the tiny spool in your hand. It's not much, but it's something. You tuck it into your pouch and decide to stop by someone who might be able to make sense of it. Elswith, the herbalist. Her shop smells like mint and thunder, always has. You duck under a dangling row of dried lavender and greet her with a nod. "Let me guess," she says, without looking up from her mortar. "The Rat Prince paid another visit. Saint now, apparently," you mutter. She snorts. "Saint,
Prince, Philosopher King. They'll be calling him High Gerald next. You hand her the spool. She turns it over in her fingers. Thread's new, she says, from the merchant quarter. But the lace? That's old. Fine work. From the seamstress near the chapel. You raise an eyebrow. He's shopping now? Or scavenging, or bartering. You suddenly remember the coin, the fish, the rats that vanished from your pouch. He's not just surviving anymore, he's networking. Someone else came by yesterday, Elswith adds. Old man. Claimed Gerald saved his grandson from drowning. Said the rat led him to the well. Barked like a dog until help arrived. You blink. Rats don't bark. Exactly. Historians still argue whether stories of heroic animals.
The sky over the town has shifted in color. No longer simply gray or blue or bruised with dusk, but something stranger. A color that feels like silence, like the moment before thunder, as if the town itself is holding its breath. You walk with purpose now, not just with tired boots and a rattling pouch, but with a rising certainty that something bigger is moving beneath the cobbles. That your story, once just about stink and rodents and being underpaid, has turned into something else entirely. You arrive at the guild's unofficial meeting point, a ruined grain shed that still smells faintly of rat urine and defeat. You expect the usual handful of grimy faces. You do not expect what's waiting inside. 10 of them, maybe more. Every rat catcher in the city. Letty's there, Hobbs, Tom, even Bartok the Tall, who swore off ratting years ago to sell smoked eels and lies. They're whispering in clumps, nervous and loud. The air is thick with something more than mildew. It's tension, fear, reverence. Letty spots you. You hear? You nod. I've heard a lot of things lately. No, I mean tonight. You raise an eyebrow. There's a meeting, Tom says, approaching with a lantern that flickers like it's scared too. Not ours, theirs. You blink. The rats are holding a meeting? He nods slowly. Near the old bell tower. You try to speak, but words fail. You want to say something sarcastic to break the spell. But deep down, some part of you believes it. They are organizing. Gerald is leading them. And tonight, something is happening. We goin'? Someone asks. The group shifts. We have to, Hobbs mutters. This is history. So, you go. You walk together, a line of tired, anxious figures in the fading light. Rat catchers, yes, but no longer in control. Just witnesses. The bell tower looms ahead, half collapsed, leaning like a drunk philosopher. It hasn't rung in years. The town avoids it, claims it's haunted, full of ghosts, birds, and bad ideas. You crouch behind a crumbled wall, and you see them. Dozens, no, hundreds. Rats. Not scurrying, gathered, in a semicircle, silent. And at the center, standing atop a stone, illuminated by moonlight slanting through a broken window, is Gerald. One ear, eyes sharp, fur grayer now than when you first saw him. He holds something in his mouth, then places it on the stone. A coin. Another one. Stamped with the same tiny rat face emblem. You can't hear anything. Not really. Just soft squeaks, rhythmic, patterned. Not chaos. Not chatter. Chanting. Gerald raises his paws. They go silent. Then, in perfect synchrony, the rats begin to move, fanning out into alleys, cracks, gutters, drains. Spreading, but not randomly, with purpose. They leave the coin behind, alone. You wait. The other rat catchers do too. No one breathes. When it's finally silent again, you all step into the light. You approach the coin, touch it, pick it up. It's heavier than it should be. Letty whispers, "What does this mean?"
You don't answer, because you don't know. But deep down, something shifts. You realize it isn't about infestations anymore, not about traps or droppings or angry noblewomen with scented gloves. It's about control, about sentience, about a rat who decided he'd had enough of running. You walk home alone. The others scatter. You can feel the city different now, less human, or maybe more balanced, like you're sharing space now with something that deserves it. You sit on your rickety stool and stare at the new symbols carved into your doorframe, the triangle, the circle, and now a line beneath them. A signature? A warning? An invitation? You're not sure anymore. You pull out your tools, your net, your pouch, your traps. You lay them on the floor. You stare at them. And for the first time in years, you wonder, what's the point? You've made your living this way, caught them, tricked them, sold them. And now one of them is organizing worship, leading strategy, saving children from wells, and returning your own caught rats as a show of power. You breathe.
You rise with the sun, but it no longer feels like your city. The air is the same, musty, damp, faintly spiced with chimney soot, but the rhythm of the town has shifted. It's in the way shopkeepers glance nervously at alleyways, in the way cats keep their distance from the gutters, in the way people leave out scraps not for strays, but for someone specific, reverent, like offerings. And everywhere you see them, not in droves, not obvious, but subtle. A tail disappearing into a crate, a flash of gray under a cart, two small eyes watching from the slats in a tavern wall. They're not hiding from you anymore, they're observing, following orders, following him. You do your rounds anyway, not because they're needed, but because it feels right, like stretching sore limbs or repeating a prayer whose meaning you no longer question. You find no nests, no gnawed sacks, no droppings, only signs. A thimble balanced on a nail, a spool of red thread coiled neatly beside a window, a pebble, smooth and polished, left at the chapel gate. These aren't trash. They're messages, symbols. You stop by the baker's just for the comfort of routine. He offers you bread, fresh, still steaming, and doesn't ask for coin. On the house, he says quietly, for what you've done. You blink. What have I done? He shrugs. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. You leave without answers. By midday, the news has spread. No rat sightings in the grain storage. No infestations reported at the docks. The tannery, for the first time in decades, smells only of leather and labor. And the chapel bells, silent for years, ring once. You freeze. One single, clear chime. You rush there, boots pounding on stone, heart loud in your chest. Father Willem stands at the doors, robes flapping slightly in the wind. You meet his eyes. He nods slowly and gestures. Inside, a crowd has gathered. Not massive, but solemn. They face the altar, and on that altar sits a coin, rat-stamped. Beside it, a broken trap. And in the far corner, half shrouded in shadow, a rat perches on the edge of a pew. You know who it is. Gerald. He doesn't run. He doesn't move. He simply watches. You meet his gaze. And something passes between you. Acknowledgement. A nod between equals. Or, at the very least, survivors. Someone in the crowd whispers, "He came here on purpose." Another, "He's not a pest anymore." And another, "He's choosing peace." You step forward. No net, no bait, just you. You kneel beside the coin, pick it up. It's warm again, always warm.
You stand, turn, and address the room, though you didn't plan to speak. He's not here to harm anyone, you say. Not anymore. They murmur. You pause. He's organized, disciplined, smart, smarter than any of us gave him credit for. A pause. He warned us. He saved people. He left symbols. And now he's watching, not just for food, for balance. Historians still argue whether this kind of reverence for animals stemmed from belief or desperation. But here, in this room, in this town, it feels like neither. It feels earned. You step back, letting the crowd move forward, one by one, offering coins, bits of bread, even scraps of lace. A child leaves a tiny carved rat figure made of wood. A woman drops a feather. And Gerald watches it all. Then, slowly, silently, he turns and disappears through a crack in the wall. Gone. No scurrying, no panic. Just gone. You walk home with a strange lightness in your chest. Not relief, not pride, just peace. At your hut, the door is slightly ajar. Inside, your net is gone. In its place, a single copper coin balanced atop your pouch, and a small piece of parchment. No writing, just a scratched symbol. A circle with a line through it. A final mark. Maybe a thank you. Maybe goodbye. You smile.